The radar warning receiver screams. Fox 2's cockpit floods with amber light as the threat indicator spikes to maximum, 10 nautical miles. That's the distance between an American F-16 and two North Korean MiG-29s, closing at 600 miles per hour over the East Sea. The pilot's hand hovers over the weapons selector. His heart rate climbs past 140. Through the canopy, he can see them now. Two dark silhouettes against the morning sky, their nose radars painting his aircraft with targeting energy. Launch indicators flash. 4 missiles, R-27s and R-73s, fully armed, fully capable. The electronic warfare system detects multiple lock attempts. His wingmen call out bearings, distances, threat assessments. But no one says the word everyone's thinking: engaged. Because 9 nautical miles, 8, 7.5. At this range, reaction time compresses to seconds. A single radar lock completes. One finger twitches on a trigger. One misread signal. And 6 American fighters, 2 South Korean F-15s, and 2 Japanese F-2s, a trilateral formation representing 3 allied nations, could ignite a conflict that would cascade across the Pacific in minutes. The MiGs bank hard, their wingtips slicing through cloud layers. They're not backing off. They're maneuvering for firing position. Fox 1's voice cuts through the radio, steady but urgent. Break formation, maintain vector, no retreat. This is it. The moment where training collides with instinct, where protocol battles survival, where one pilot's decision in the next 15 seconds will either defuse a humanitarian crisis or trigger the first shots of a war nobody wants, but everyone has prepared for. The distance closes, 6 nautical miles. Fox 2's thumb rests on the countermeasure dispenser. His finger curls around the stick. Then something happens. Something small, something that shouldn't matter. But in the razor-thin space between peace and catastrophe, it changes everything. 4 days earlier, North Korea launched a Hwasong-12 ballistic missile straight through Japan's air defense identification zone, a brazen demonstration that Pyongyang still controlled the tempo of provocations in Northeast Asia. The missile traced an arc over the Sea of Japan before splashing down in international waters, far enough from Japanese territory to avoid immediate retaliation, but close enough to send an unmistakable message. For years, this had been North Korea's playbook. Launch, threaten, negotiate, repeat. Each cycle reset the region's strategic calculus, while Pyongyang extracted diplomatic concessions and economic relief. But on June 18th, the script changed. Instead of press conferences and emergency UN Security Council meetings, Washington responded with something far more unnerving. 6 fully armed F-16s operating in contested waters without asking permission, without issuing notifications, and without any indication they would back down if challenged. At 6:53 a.m., Osan Air Base in South Korea became the launch point for what Pentagon planners were calling a freedom of navigation operation, but what Pyongyang would interpret as a direct challenge to their claimed exclusion zones. On runway 3, 6 F-16 Fighting Falcons bearing U.S. Air Force insignia lined up in 2 rows, cockpit sealed, pilots silent. Call signs Fox 1 through Fox 6. Every crew member understood this wasn't a training sortie. This was a deliberate show of force, a strategic deterrent aimed directly at North Korea's leadership. 2 minutes later, takeoff clearance was issued. Within 30 seconds, all 6 F-16s began rolling, their F-110GE-129 engines accelerating each aircraft to 190 miles per hour in under 9 seconds. The initial abreast formation quickly transitioned into an open aero configuration, heading northeast at a cruising altitude of 22,000 feet and a stable speed close to Mach 0.9. The weapons configuration told the real story. Mounted on each wing, 2 AIM-120C AMRAAM long-range air-to-air missiles equipped with high-explosive blast fragmentation warheads containing approximately 40 pounds of PBX-9501, a high-energy plastic-bonded explosive designed to destroy targets through supersonic shockwaves and fragmentation. 2 AIM-9X Sidewinder short-range missiles, each with a multi-mode infrared seeker, and ANWGU-21 high-explosive warhead, carrying about 21 pounds of AFX-757 compound, capable of disabling an enemy jet with a single hit to the engine or fuselage. Additionally, each F-16 carried 2 underwing external fuel tanks of 370 gallons, extending the combat radius to over 930 miles, covering all of North Korea's eastern coastline and the Japanese archipelago. This configuration left no ambiguity. This wasn't deterrence through presence. This was a fully armed strike package with layered capabilities for both short and long-range engagements, able to operate deep within contested zones without mid-air refueling. 7 minutes and 3 seconds into the flight, once the formation crossed 93 miles from the North Korean border, the ALQ-131A electronic warfare pods activated their first level of low-frequency jamming. Immediately, radar stations at Wonsan and Sondok detected anomalies. Background noise surged by 23%, triggering a shift to active scan mode across North Korea's Eastern Air Defense Network. Every maneuver by the U.S. formation was calculated. They never violated sovereign airspace, but got close enough to activate every eastern-facing surveillance node. Inside a command post in Pyongyang, a radar console flashed red. An on-duty officer raised the alert. IIF data confirmed American fighter jets transmitting no codes, requesting no corridor, and refusing to deactivate electronic warfare pods. Radar returns confirmed the formation was operating in international airspace, but dangerously close to a point Pyongyang had previously declared a red line. North Korea's general staff was raised to alert level 2. Moments later, from Suncheon Air Base, 2 MiG-29s were scrambled for immediate intercept. They didn't climb in standard formation, but broke off laterally, configured for a rapid engagement intercept profile. Radar systems switched to look-up shoot-up mode, enabling high-altitude target lock. Critically, each jet was armed with 2 R-27 medium-range air-to-air missiles and 2 R-73 short-range missiles fully capable of live fire. Upon command, nose radars went to high-power mode. Internal communications reported unidentified target vector for shadow intercept. This wasn't a patrol, it was a demonstrative response, a required posture in the face of unannounced foreign military presence near what Pyongyang considered its defensive perimeter. At 7 hours 6 minutes into the operation, over the sea 110 nautical miles north of Jeju Island, the 2 North Korean MiG-29s closed in on the U.S. formation. Separation between the two groups narrowed to 29 nautical miles, far too close for routine air policing. This was a tactically loaded situation. On the radar screen of Fox 2, that faint trail from the upper right edge materialized into something concrete and threatening. Its heading was perfectly parallel to the exercise boundary. Within less than 60 seconds, the signal was validated by at least 3 other aircraft. Fox 1 transmitted internally, break formation, maintain vector, no retreat. Fox 3 and Fox 4 immediately dropped altitude, maintaining safe lateral offset from the core group. The remaining 2 jets rotated radar azimuth east-northeast, placing intercept arcs ahead of the unknown's flight path. Both sides now understood that a single mistaken radar lock, one premature track while scan, and the F-16 weapon suite would elevate to red alert. What happened next could spiral in full view of the global stage.
Exactly 3 minutes later, the tracks clarified beyond doubt. A pair of North Korean MiG-29s. Yet the F-16s held position. No altitude change, no withdrawal. This calm was no accident. It was trained, authorized, and monitored from Pentagon satellites. This was a standard U.S. freedom of navigation operation, executed routinely in contested waters to assert legal boundaries and preserve transit rights that all regional states are entitled to. At 7 hours and 10 minutes, the 2 MiG-29s accelerated individual intercept range. Separation shrank to under 10 nautical miles, close enough for radar to enter semi-active track mode. Then came the signal that would define the entire encounter, a subtle wing dip from Fox 1 to the right, a nonverbal air combat signal recognized across military aviation worldwide. The message was clear: you're getting too close. The 2 MiG-29s understood the warning, because more than anyone, Pyongyang knew what this kind of standoff could lead to. Both governments had studied the 2001 Hainan Island incident, where a U.S. EP-3 reconnaissance aircraft collided with a Chinese fighter jet, killing the Chinese pilot and creating a diplomatic crisis that took months to resolve. Neither Washington nor Pyongyang wanted that outcome over the East Sea in 2025. At 7 hours, 20 minutes, and 14 seconds, nearly 10 minutes into the intercept, an encrypted signal was transmitted from Pyongyang's command center to the 2 MiG-29s. The voice of the coordinating officer came through: maintain distance, do not cross the surveillance threshold. Both MiG-29s adjusted course immediately. Their nose angles shifted 7 degrees northward. Airspeed reduced, altitude held steady. just enough to signal withdrawal intent. To the southwest, the US F-16 formation remained steady at 22,000 feet. No course change, no evasive maneuvering, but the ALQ-131A pod stayed active, projecting a clear message. We're not here to start a war, but we're ready. At 7 hours, 21 minutes, and 33 seconds, one MiG activated its identification lights, blinking 3 times in a classic military recognition pattern. It marked the end of the intercept. Moments later, both MiG-29s veered fully toward Wonsan Port, exiting the engagement zone. No missiles left their rails, but the morning's aerial standoff had made one thing abundantly clear. A single mistaken radar lock or a misrouted radio warning could trigger an unintended engagement with consequences neither side could fully control. This was no random flyby. It was calculated. A message that Pyongyang was still watching, still tracking, and still waiting to retell the story on its own terms. But the F-16 formation flew on as if the intercept had never occurred. All 6 jets held altitude, speed, and their exact corridor, passing through as if nothing had happened. That in itself was the strongest signal a professional Air Force could send in a strategic gray zone. What truly unsettled Pyongyang wasn't US aggression, but the fact that Washington never asked permission, never acknowledged North Korea's claimed ownership of the sky, and never deviated from the planned flight path despite being shadowed by armed interceptors. At 7:26 a.m., 92 nautical miles southwest of Jeju Island, the trilateral formation officially converged. 6 F-16s from the United States Air Force, launched from Osan Air Base, had stabilized at 22,000 feet after executing a tactical loop along the edge of North Korea's ADIZ. From the south, 2 F-15K Slam Eagles of the Republic of Korea Air Force ascended sharply to 24,000 feet. At the same time, 2 F-2s from the northeast approached, crossing the East China Sea to join the formation. All 3 units locked into position, creating a sawtooth triangle configuration standard for modern integrated air defense drills, maximizing radar coverage and distributing tactical roles. Immediately afterward, the training sequence began. Combined air defense drills where South Korean aircraft acted as high-value targets under simulated threat conditions. Simulated intercept exercises where the US F-16 flight executed tactical strike drills simulating low-altitude ingress. Electronic maneuvering where ALQ-131A jamming pods were reactivated to simulate suppression of ground-based radar, creating a mock electronic warfare environment within sensitive maritime space. This was the first joint drill under South Korean President E.J. Mung, who recently declared his intent to deepen US-Japan-Korea defense ties on the foundation of sovereign independence. And it marked the first time in months that the United States chose to conduct a public exercise near North Korea's sensitive exclusion zone without issuing any prior diplomatic notification. A controlled operation, but one carried out precisely along Pyongyang's psychological fault line. What unsettled Pyongyang wasn't the exercise itself, but the speed of coordination and the proximity achieved. In the past, each North Korean missile launch was met with press statements and diplomatic concern. Now, every provocation is tracked in real time, analyzed through a tactical lens, and countered by live operational formations. When 3 air forces, once separated by history, combine into a unified strike network, the result isn't just a drill, it's a rehearsal for integrated strategy. In Pyongyang, the question is no longer, when will the US respond, but do we still have room to act without immediate retaliation? In an environment where any radar emission could trigger a preemptive strike, even minor miscalculations carry the risk of an official counterattack. At that point, there is no gray zone left to negotiate, no space left for brinkmanship. North Korean media later reported on foreign aircraft near the border and dangerous maneuvers by hostile air forces. Over the next 3 days, fighter sorties from airfields like Wonsan and Sonduk doubled, primarily short-duration combat air patrols along the border in wide perimeter loops. A defensive reaction not meant for display, not meant to signal offense, just enough to avoid appearing unready. Ground radar stations in Hamgyong province ran continuously. Low-band frequencies showed signs of interference, a clear indication that electronic warfare systems were now in alert mode. In strategic intelligence circles, this points to one thing: loss of tempo control.
Pyongyang was no longer dictating the narrative. It was merely reacting to a rhythm set in Washington. At 9 a.m., the 6 F-16s exited the zone on schedule. No photos were released, no press briefing, no tweet. Only a technical report sent directly to the Pentagon, along with satellite imagery capturing each flight path, each simulated radar lock, each maneuver down to the degree. Because for the United States, action doesn't require noise, only precision and clarity enough to make the adversary rethink its playbook. North Korea understood this, because what worries Pyongyang aren't 6 F-16s. They're too familiar to be threatening, too limited to spark open war. But that's exactly what makes them symbolic of something bigger. When your adversary no longer fears your reaction, your gray zone strategy collapses.